Ibrahim Traoré's bold rejection of Trump's invitation, a defiant stand for Africa's sovereignty. Ibrahim Traoré has sent shockwaves not just across Africa, but around the world, with a decision that defied global expectations. He refused an invitation to attend Donald Trump's presidential inauguration in the United States, a move that many see as a defining moment in modern African leadership. The leader of one of Africa's rising nations was personally invited to witness the most powerful man in the world take the oath of office. Yet, Traoré did not hesitate. He declined. This was more than just declining an invitation. It was a declaration of independence, a message to the world that Burkina Faso and Africa will no longer be treated as a junior partner in global affairs. For decades, African leaders have rushed to secure seats at events like this, seeing them as opportunities to gain favor with Western powers. Many believe such invitations symbolize recognition, a stamp of approval from global elites. The mere presence of an African president at such a gathering has long been considered an honor, a chance to shake hands with world leaders and strengthen diplomatic ties. Leaders from the UK and other Western nations who were eager to attend weren't even invited. Yet Traoré, when offered a front-row seat to history, walked away without a second thought. But why? What made Traoré reject what so many leaders crave? The truth is simple: he saw through the illusion. He understood that the West did not invite him out of admiration or respect. The invitation was not about celebrating democracy or international friendship. It was a calculated move, an attempt to pull Burkina Faso into the orbit of Western influence. Traoré knew that accepting the invitation could be the first step toward subtle control, the beginning of a process where foreign powers would seek to shape his decisions, dictate policies, and make him dependent on their approval. He was not willing to be drawn into that game. Traoré's refusal was a statement, a clear rejection of the old ways where African leaders bowed to Western invitations as if they were commands. He understood that leaders who chase validation from Washington and Paris often end up as puppets, trapped in cycles of debt, burdened by IMF conditions, and forced to accept foreign military presence under the guise of security assistance. He refused to be another name on that list. For Traoré, true leadership means prioritizing his people over diplomatic pleasantries. While some leaders waste time on ceremonies, he focuses on the urgent needs of his country, developing infrastructure, strengthening security, and fostering self-reliance. His decision made it clear: Burkina Faso has more pressing concerns than standing in line to shake hands with an American president. The days of African leaders seeking approval from Western powers are over. Traoré's bold move is not just about him. It is about reshaping Africa's position on the world stage. It is a reminder that sovereignty is not granted, it is claimed. Ibrahim Traoré saw through the illusion from the start. He understood that when African leaders engage with the West on their terms, they often surrender their independence. These so-called partnerships are rarely built on mutual respect. Instead, they serve Western economic and political interests at the expense of African sovereignty. Countries are pressured into agreements that grant American and European corporations access to their resources, dictate their security policies, and shape their governance to align with foreign agendas. By rejecting the invitation to Trump's inauguration, Traoré effectively shut the door on any Western attempt to entangle Burkina Faso in their geopolitical web. His decision was not just another diplomatic move, it was a bold statement that resonated far beyond his borders. It sent shockwaves through political circles in Africa, Europe, and the United States, leaving Western policymakers unsettled. They had expected compliance, as they had grown accustomed to African leaders eagerly accepting such invitations. Instead, Traoré's refusal was a direct challenge to the status quo. In diplomatic circles, his move was seen as an act of defiance, a clear message that Burkina Faso was no longer willing to be controlled by former colonial powers. Across Africa, his decision was met with widespread praise, especially among the youth, who have grown disillusioned with leaders who prioritize foreign approval over national interests. Many saw Traoré as a leader with backbone, someone unafraid to break free from the cycle of dependence that has kept Africa subservient for decades. He was hailed as a symbol of true leadership, one that put dignity before diplomacy and sovereignty before submission. Western governments, on the other hand, were caught off guard. The fact that a leader from a relatively small West African nation had the audacity to turn down the world's most powerful country shattered the long-standing myth that Africa remains under the firm grip of the United States and its allies. His rejection was not just a personal decision, it set a precedent, proving that African leaders can stand their ground without fearing economic or political consequences. This was never about skipping a ceremonial event, it was about resisting a system that has historically kept Africa dependent. Under Traoré, Burkina Faso has pivoted toward self-reliance, deepening ties with emerging global players such as China, Russia, and Turkey, instead of relying on Western aid that comes with strings attached. His government has refused loans from the IMF and World Bank, institutions that have long been used as tools of control, forcing nations to implement policies that serve foreign investors rather than their own citizens. Instead, Burkina Faso is focusing on building an economy driven by its own people, free from the economic stranglehold of international creditors. As news spread that Traoré had turned down Trump's invitation, an immediate shift in the narrative began. Initially, multiple reports confirmed that the Burkinabe leader had been invited, but had declined. The revelation sent ripples through diplomatic circles, as such invitations are typically regarded as prestigious and acknowledgement of global recognition. But then, something curious happened. Suddenly, Western media began to cast doubt on whether Traoré had even been invited in the first place. Almost as if on cue, unnamed U.S. officials and diplomatic sources started claiming that the entire story had been fabricated by pro-African media. This abrupt change in the narrative raised more questions than answers. Why had this denial only emerged after Traoré's refusal had already made headlines? If he was never invited, why didn't the White House immediately issue a statement refuting the claim? Why wait until the damage had been done before attempting to rewrite the story? The timing of this reversal was too convenient to be a coincidence. It reeked of damage control, an attempt to contain a diplomatic embarrassment that had already played out in public. The truth is simple. Traoré's rejection bruised the West's ego. For decades, the United States and its allies have grown accustomed to African leaders eagerly seeking validation from Washington and European capitals. The mere idea that an independent-minded African leader would dismiss such an opportunity without hesitation was unthinkable. The rejection was a reality check, a sign that Africa is changing, that a new generation of leaders is no longer willing to play by the old rules. Donald Trump is not the kind of man who takes rejection lightly. His entire political persona is built on dominance, commanding loyalty, respect, and obedience from world leaders. Being turned down by an African leader, particularly one from a country the West has historically overlooked, would have been more than just an insult. It would have been a direct challenge to his influence. For Trump, image is everything. If an invitation was extended to Traoré, it was likely a calculated move away to strengthen U.S. ties in Africa as part of Washington's larger effort to counter China and Russia's growing presence on the continent. A public rejection, however, would have completely disrupted that strategy. It would have exposed just how much America's grip on African affairs has loosened. Instead of dealing with the embarrassment of Burkina Faso's young leader outright rejecting a U.S. president, the administration conveniently allowed anonymous sources to cast doubt on whether the invitation even existed in the first place. The goal was simple: shift the conversation. Instead of global headlines focusing on a direct snub from Traore, the narrative was redirected to debates over whether the invite was real at all. Classic damage control. But invitation or not, the message remains unchanged. African leaders are no longer seeking validation from the West. For decades, it was expected that African governments would compete for Washington's approval. Attending high-profile events like U.S. presidential inaugurations or European summits was seen as a mark of prestige, a way for African leaders to signal their inclusion in the so-called global elite. But Traore has shattered that illusion. He has proven that a leader's legitimacy does not come from Western recognition, but from serving their people with integrity and purpose. His refusal, whether officially confirmed or not, is just another chapter in Burkina Faso's broader push for sovereignty and self-reliance. It signals a shift in Africa's political landscape, where leaders are no longer content with playing by the West's rules. What do you think? Should Ibrahim Traoré have accepted the invitation, or was rejecting it the right move? Share your thoughts in the comments below on what might have happened if he had attended the inauguration. Would his life have been in danger, considering his growing opposition to Western influence? If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more discussions on Africa's changing political landscape. Stay tuned for the next video.